The Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act of 1989 has seen mixed responses among the general public, with several leaders, organizations voicing out in favor of repealing the act from the state, while there is another group that wants better implementation and no repeal of the act. On this matter, HornbillTV had an open discussion with Nbcc General Secretary Reverend Zelhou Keyho regarding the Nltp Act, and he did admit that the Nbcc felt comfortable after the act was legislated, but admitted failure in following up on the implementation of the act. Reverend Keyho further supported the act and said that giving license to something that ruined many families in the past today would introduce more evils in our society. Let's have a look at the conversation.
Nagaland itia burning issue to itu Nltp Act, Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act ase kundu itia Nagaland ge split kuina je kuma to kwase itu Nltp Act to lift kui dio lage kwase kuma manu do itu lift na kuri gene aru itu laupore aru bishi kam kuri ne mohan la society do itu alcohol free ekta banaw lage la kwa bi huni paje man itu nishna yare itu Nbcc laga General Secretary Zelhou Keyho ki bi kotha kuine jabo holibi itu laga age man itu tik Nltp Act to ki ase kole ekta backdrop janai dio to ki ase kole to almost 3 decades nishna itu Naga Mothers Association Civil Societies kunba aru itu Nbcc pra spearhead kurigina itu alcohol do Nagaland itu ban kuri diwole kam bishi diri kuinaise aru finally 1990 re government bra tahan awas hunigina itu Nltp Act to implement kurise aru 1990 re Nltp Act implement kuina itia tak bi inega hi ase mon 2023 punjise aru itu Nltp Act to kiman tak successful ase aru itu eklai nohilibi Nbcc khan hoilibi itu laga opore kundu poila pra itu spearhead kuina as a pressure group act kurigena itu act implement kuise tahan hoilibi tahana bhapna hudine jawa to sir, thank you so much for joining Hornbill TV, and we'll be talking more about the society and the Nltp Act in general, sir. But before that, sir, since Nbcc has been a pressure group of the implementation of Nltp Act, and it finally was implemented, sir. Since then, since 1990, sir, what has been the role of Nbcc, sir?
Well, thank you very much, Hornbill TV. I think the voice of the people is also important, and the church also should listen to what the people out there are saying. And I guess we are listening well, I hope, I should say. The Nltp Act, so sometimes we take beyond the real purpose of trying to find a solution in between. It becomes an argument, and when it becomes an argument, usually finding out a solution becomes difficult. If we look at the history very briefly, actually the struggle of this control system began 60 years ago, or over 60 years ago. But then 30 years after that struggle, the act was implemented, and the assurance of the government came in 89, and officially it was enacted as an act in 1990. And if we look at the act, I think it was a beautifully drafted act, and many people do not go through the act and then they just talk about a dry state, and then we become, there is a factor of those who will say it should be lifted, and then there is another group who will say that the act should be implemented. And I think that is where the church, the position of the church stands. The act itself, if it is not implemented, it's like a paper tiger. It's beautifully drafted, but the implementation part is something that we are lagging. Immediately we will talk about the revenue. Immediately we'll talk about the evil that are happening, and then the church is also blamed as if we are contributing to the evils in the society. But when it is misunderstood, it can be presented that way. But I think what the church has been saying is this. Let us for once have an iron will and implement it and see. Because without implementation, if we just begin to discuss, start talking about lifting based on revenue, we will not know the failure and also the success of the act. Actually, when we say dry state, there are also provisions where liquor can be made available. Controlled system is there. To the alcoholics, the medical doctors will have to prescribe and then slowly wean them out. And also the government also in the act, it says that the rehab centers will be opened with the help of expert medical counselors and so on and so forth. But all those acts are just in paper but not implemented. Even the excise officials, they are supposed to have a directorate, but those things are also not implemented. And when the act came, perhaps we have only 3 or 4 districts. But now look at how many districts are there. And we have not updated ourselves. 400 personnel are supposed to be there. Back then, 30 years ago. But now, 30 years after, how many personnel should be there? All those things were not taken into consideration. And we also should not lose the background of why the church pressured the government to bring this act to have a control factor in this alcohol menace that was there 30 years ago or 60 years ago. So the position of the church is this. Let us go through the act, implement it, and say this is something impossible for us. And come to the table and then present it and then have a reasonable discussions. Let us not start talking about controlling the diet of the local people, controlling the diet of the citizens, but let us see what alcohol has done, or let us begin to see what it is doing to our society, especially to our young generations, and then have an objective analysis, maybe sometimes a critical analysis, evaluation to present it to the people and say, this is where we are, and therefore this is what we must do. Yeah.
All right. So right now it was, implemented into, like you said, papers. In 1990s, sir. But now you are saying that it should be implemented, and then only say that we cannot do it, sir. So somehow that means you're also saying that it hasn't been implemented yet, sir. Yes. So does that mean that the Nbcc has also failed to be strong pressure group for the Nltp Act, sir, after it has been implemented in papers?
Well, maybe I can say this. Maybe we must have felt just too comfortable with the act, and then just depend on the government. Since it has been legislated, the implementation part is the role of the government. But I guess when the act came in, the church must have felt comfortable and say, oh, now it's done. It has become an act. So that's where the church, I think we have failed. We should have followed up. By way of following up with opening the rehab centers, or even educating our people. And I think we have failed in that. We have seen, we think that the alcoholics are evil people, maybe just just for the conversation's sake. And we have not really taken the burden to reach out to them. And I think that is the flaw of the church that we have made. But we are also trying to pick up that we need to take the church to the alcoholics. We need to educate them because I think unless we educate them, unless we take the church to the people, the alcoholics, I think just shouting on the rooftop and asking them and telling them that drinking is evil, it's not going to help. So we are encouraging associations, churches to set up rehab centers with professional counselors so that we deal with this, side by side with the implementation and also ministry to the alcoholics. Yeah.
Sir, so just recently before the delegates of the G20 summit turned up, sir, something from the Nltp Act unfolded, sir, where people, I think you are also quite aware of what I'm talking about, sir. There is, in the Nltp Act, it seems the government stated that, a few selected hotels or restaurants were allowed to sell alcohol, sir, to the tourists, sir. And there were organizations and associations who were against that, sir. So do you think the Nltp Act had a loophole there, sir? Or do you think it is, the Act itself, in itself is perfect, sir?
Well, in the Act, if we go through, there are provisions. But I think abiding on that provision at that time was a mistake because the provision has never been implemented, or maybe under the table that things are going on. And what the church felt at the time was to, as a Christian majority state, we should not welcome people with the provision saying that alcohol is going to be made available in the star hotels. If it is there, do it. But we also know that once that is opened, it is not just only going to the tourist, but beneath at the table, lots of undesirable things can happen. So let the Act be there, and then if it is something that has to be implemented, do it. But don't openly welcome our guests with the provision that is there. That was the stand of the church. Yeah.
All right, sir. So now, earlier we even spoke about this also, but sir, do you think, the Act in itself, the abbreviation Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act, sir, it clearly said liquor, sir. But now we are seeing that, a lot of youths, in fact, many people has been caught to be selling drugs like heroin, sunflower, sir. Do you think this culture is coming up again, sir? And we have seen village councils and, leaders speak against this, sir. So do you think the Nbcc and the NMA and the other civil societies missed out the part where they should also be banning drugs as well, sir?
Well, we cannot be selective. Let me say, when there is a problem of alcohol, when there is a problem of drugs, now sunflower is doing the round, and I think we cannot say our ministry will be just only confined to alcohol, to the alcoholics, or to total liquor prohibition. But I think the church ministry has to be broad enough, very embracive, should be embracive, and that is to say, whether it be alcohol problem, whether it be drugs, whether it be other social evil issues, I think the church should pick up the pace on the same level. Since we are talking about liquor, I'm presenting from that perspective, but when we say rehab centers, it is not just only confined to the alcoholics, but also to the drug addicts. And we are getting more information, even from the police sectors. They are perhaps doing very well in the last few months. And we hope that we will have a deliberation together, a conversation together, where we can tackle the menace of drugs and alcohol in our society.
All right, sir. So do you think NBCC as a pressure group against liquor will be as strong as a pressure group against, drugs in Nagaland, sir?
Well, I think at the moment we are doing some background studies, and I think we should not lose grip of our fight. So we hope to come out strong. That is not against the system, but also to save the younger generation. Yeah.
What has the church done so far, sir, since 1990?
Since 1990, I think here and there pockets of education and also sensitizing the people we do, but we have not really forcefully carried on that education program in the church. But lately, we are beginning to pick up. Associations are now beginning to set up rehab centers, not just only for the alcoholics, but also for the drug addicts. I can name a few, like the Cognac Association, the POM Association, the Chakesang Associations, and even the Kemyungan Association. The one local church is also setting up rehab centers in Noklak town. So I think we hope that if we have failed in the past, we must learn our lesson, and then we must go forward. Yeah.
All right, sir. So last year I attended a program where the advisor to education, the department, Katie Sakalo, spoke. And I don't know if you have come across his statement, but he said that, if he's elected again, which he has been, sir, he said that he will work to lift the Nltp Act. And with that particular revenue coming from that area, he said that, he will use it in the educational department to educate our students, sir. What would you say on that? And many other people also has such views, sir. What would you like to say on that?
Well, that is what he said, and I will leave that to the people to judge. But revenue is not the main issue here. There are other means and ways where we can bring revenues. For example, like public transportation, the power department, or even other departments where we can get revenues for the functioning or for development programs. But if we say that, we are going to leave this and then the revenues we are going to use, giving a license to something that has created havoc and evil in the society, by lifting, we are going to bring more evils into it, and this is not the time to be talking about corruptions. But why we are a revenue-starved state? Why our state is not functioning? Why we are just only concerned about paying salaries? We are not sincerely mitigating our incomes into where it should go. That's the problem. So I don't see the logic that lifting will earn a lot of money for the government, especially from this liquor business. Rather, it will create more confusion. Random licensing will be given. Random carriage of the stuff that intoxicate the common people, there will be no shadow of fear in our society. And I think whether it works or not, at least the Nltp Act has there is also a shadow of fear in it that the act is there, and the police has the right to seize or also to check. If we let the little shadow of fear that we have disappear, I don't know what will happen to our society. Yeah.
All right, sir. So now we're talking about our neighboring state, Assam, sir. Hornbill TV has covered a lot of news where shops are openly selling alcohol. That too, at a higher rate with which they are finding in Assam. That's like just for a few shops, it's like 10 minutes away, sir, if they go by car. Just 10 minutes away. And if it's brought into Nagaland, then it's being sold at, double the rate, sir, sometimes. Sir, so, apart from opening rehabilitation centers for alcoholics, sir, do you think the Nbcc should start acting as strong pressure groups again, if at all you think that Nltp Act should be implemented properly once and for all?
Well, unless we educate the people, unless we go down to the grassroots level, just only giving pressure and saying drinking is bad and therefore the actor should stay, I think logically it is not going to help. We have to go down to the level where we should build up our system and say it is bad because of this, and therefore try to pull people out of it. Talking about our neighbor, that's the business that they do. The reason why we are flocking to that part is because they are customers, and we have no control over their system. I believe that education is important for us in the church level, in the family level, so that let's work with the step of trying to minimize the impact and gain our ground, and then from there go ahead. Yeah.
So lastly, sir, where does the state government and the Nbcc stand when it comes to the Nltp Act, and what do you plan to do, sir?
Well, the government has the act, and in the past the church pressured the government to come up with that act. So for now, or as it was, the government has the act, and the church is pressuring the government implement it. Let us implement the act, and let us see. If it is just put in a cold storage and say that Nagaland is a dry state, it is not going to work. So go through the act together, and then implement it and say, this is your role, because since it is legislated, the church can also not just jump into it based on the act, but I think we can have a better understanding, and then say, this is what you must do, and this is what you must do. So our stand now is, since they have the act, show us that the government is serious about implementing. And the church, as I have said earlier, the church will also work hard to reduce the impact of this alcohol, the usage of alcohol in our society, and I think we are committed to do that. Yeah.
Thank you for speaking to Hornbill TV, sir. To itu thagishe mohan Hornbill TV kan Nagaland Baptist Churches Council laga General Secretary Reverend Dr. Zelhou Keyho logote kotha kurala. Aro tai pra kwa to itu poila itu Nltp Act to strongly implement na koine ahine thagilibi. Itia pra aru strongly implement kuri kina itu pressure group kan hulibi aru itu government hulibi mili kina nijor la role jani kina itu society de itu alcohol do ban koribo lage koine tai janai dishe man aru itula upor de holibi updates khan loine ahine apni hange diwo viewers kange public law opinion ki ase government law opinion ki ase itu an holibi update koine taigo moi ase reporter ke Christian Keyho with camera person Pangloi for Hornbill TV